Iran is a place where ancient civilizations left behind impossible architecture, where volcanoes rise above emerald forests, and where islands bleed red into the sea. In this video, we're going to explore the most incredible places in Iran, from blood-red beaches in the south to ancient rock tombs carved by kings, from a desert that broke world temperature records to waterfalls hidden deep in jungle-covered mountains. But before we get to the locations, there are some facts you need to hear, because they'll completely change how you see this country, and some of them are so surprising, even most Iranians don't know them. Let's start with something extreme. Iran is home to the hottest land surface temperature ever recorded on Earth. In the Lut Desert, NASA satellites once measured the ground at a scorching 159.3 degrees Fahrenheit or approximately 70.7 degrees Celsius, hotter than the Sahara, Death Valley, or the Australian outback. And yet, life survives here. But here's what's even more surprising. While southern Iran is one of the driest places on Earth, the north is a rainforest. Yes, a rainforest. The Hercynia forests stretching along the Caspian Sea are over 50 million years old, older than the Amazon, and UNESCO has called them one of the last remaining ancient broadleaf forests on Earth. Iran also has 4 distinct seasons, all at the same time. In winter, you could be skiing on Mount Damavand, the tallest volcano in Asia at 18,406 feet or approximately 5,610 meters, while a few hundred miles away, tourists sunbathe on islands in the Persian Gulf. How is that possible? Because Iran spans climates from snowy alpine to subtropical to desert, all packed within a single country. Now let's talk scale. Iran is the 17th largest country in the world, bigger than France, Germany, and the UK combined. It has 27 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, more than Japan, more than Egypt, and it receives a fraction of the tourists those countries get. Most people don't know what's actually here. They don't know that Iran invented early algebra, that Persian carpets are still considered the finest in the world, that ice cream was likely invented here, using underground pits of snow and rosewater over 2,000 years ago. So let's fix that. We're starting in the south, on an island that looks like it belongs on another planet. It's Iran's largest island, and one of the least expected. Island sits in the Persian Gulf, just off the southern coast. But this is no ordinary beach destination. Instead of resorts and palm trees, Keshum offers a wild, otherworldly landscape. Here you'll find the Valley of the Stars, a maze of twisted rock formations that look like they've been sculpted by aliens. According to local legend, a star once fell here and shattered the Earth. Scientists say it's caused by millennia of wind and erosion. Either way, standing inside it at sunset feels like standing on the surface of Mars. Nearby is Chogha Canyon, a narrow sandstone gorge carved into deep passageways, some just wide enough for a single person to squeeze through. When it rains, water pools in natural basins at the bottom, sustaining small desert wildlife that shouldn't be able to survive here at all. The island is also home to the Hara mangrove forests, saltwater trees that rise from the sea itself, where herons hunt at low tide and the water turns mirror flat at dawn. And the most surprising part, this island is more than 80 miles or 130 kilometers long. It has its own UNESCO Geopark designation, and it remains almost completely untouched by mass tourism. But just across the water lies something even stranger. An island that looks like a painter spilled their entire palette into the sea. From above, it looks like a mistake. Like the earth ran out of colors and used them all in one place. Hormuz Island, just a short boat ride from Keshum, is one of the most colorful places on Earth. And one of the strangest. The soil here is rich in minerals, especially iron oxide, which gives the land a deep burning red. On the red beach, waves crash against crimson sand, turning the shoreline into something that looks like it belongs on Mars. But red isn't the only color. Just inland, you'll find hills in shades of yellow, orange, white, even purple. All formed by centuries of volcanic activity and mineral sediment. Geologists call it a rainbow island. That's not a metaphor. That's literally what it looks like. One of the island's most unusual features is edible soil. Yes, locals actually use the red mineral powder as a spice in traditional dishes. It's called galak. The same iron-rich earth that colors the beaches seasons their food. The entire island is only 26 square miles, 42 square kilometers. You can walk it in a day, but what you'll see in that day, you won't find anywhere else on Earth. Now we leave the coast behind. We're going inland. Deep into the desert, to the hottest place ever measured on the surface of our planet. In the Lut Desert, NASA once recorded a ground temperature of 159.3 degrees Fahrenheit or 70.7 degrees Celsius. Not air temperature, ground temperature. Hot enough to fry an egg on a rock. Hot enough to kill most forms of life within minutes. This is the Lut Desert, the empty desert, and it holds the world record for the hottest land surface temperature ever measured anywhere on Earth. Hotter than the Sahara, hotter than Death Valley, hotter than anywhere in Australia. And yet, researchers discovered something here that shook the scientific world. Life. Microbial organisms clinging to salt crusts and black basalt rock, surviving in conditions that should be impossible for biology. That discovery raised new questions about life on Mars, because Lut looks almost identical to certain regions of the Martian surface. This desert isn't just extreme, it's surreal. The Gondom Plateau, a massive black basalt field, absorbs heat like a furnace and radiates it back in waves you can see shimmering in the air. And to the east, the Kalut rise from the sand. Massive wind-carved ridges that stretch for miles like the ruins of an alien city, sculpted over thousands of years by a wind that never stops. No shade, no water, no permanent settlements, and yet it's one of the most beautiful places in Iran. And the city that sits on the edge of this extreme landscape, it's been here for over 4,000 years. Kerman, the gateway to the impossible. Situated at the edge of the Lut Desert, it is one of the oldest cities in southeastern Iran. a key stop on the ancient Silk Road, famous for its carpets, its pistachios, and its architecture. At the heart of the city is the Ganjali Khan complex, a stunning 17th century combination of bathhouse, mosque, caravanserai, and bazaar. Its hammam still has its original sunken basins and painted ceilings. Its bazaar still smells of saffron and dried fruit. And just 35 miles or around 56 kilometers outside the city, something completely unexpected appears in the middle of the desert. Yazd Garden, the Prince's Garden. In a landscape of dust and stone, suddenly there are fountains. Waterfalls cascading down a long terraced axis. Cypress trees. Rose beds. The sound of running water where there should be silence. Built in the 19th century by a Qajar prince, Yazd is a UNESCO-listed Persian garden, one of 9 in Iran that together earned the designation. The design follows a principle ancient Persians called paradisa, an enclosed paradise, a deliberate act of beauty imposed on a hostile landscape. It's where the word paradise in English actually comes from. But here's what most visitors miss. Kerman is also the base for exploring the calottes of the Lut Desert, those alien-looking ridges we just described, lying just 95 miles, 150 kilometers, away. The contrast is staggering. You can drink tea in a 400-year-old bathhouse in the morning and stand in one of the most extreme environments on Earth by afternoon. But Kerman has one more secret, and it lies about 120 miles, 193 kilometers, to the southeast. The Bam Citadel, Arg-e Bam, is the largest adobe structure on Earth. Built over 2,000 years ago and continuously inhabited until the 20th century, it rises from the desert like a city frozen in time. Towers, ramparts, a bazaar, a governor's palace, and thousands of rooms, all constructed from mud, brick, and clay. At its peak, it housed over 9,000 people within its walls. In 2003, a devastating earthquake measuring 6.6 on the Richter scale destroyed 80% of the citadel and killed more than 26,000 people in the surrounding city. It was one of the deadliest earthquakes of the modern era. What you see today is a citadel in careful reconstruction. UNESCO-listed, painstakingly restored brick by brick, year by year. Sections are complete and extraordinary. Others are still scaffolded, still healing. Standing inside it feels like witnessing both the weight of 2,000 years and the determination of a people who refused to let it disappear. That's the rhythm of Iran. Ancient comfort and wild extremes, always within reach of each other. But now we leave the desert entirely. We're heading northwest, to a city built from poetry, roses, and mirrored light. Shiraz isn't just a city, it's an idea. For centuries, it was known across the Islamic world as a center of poetry, gardens, and culture. This is the birthplace of Hafez and Sa'di, 2 of the most celebrated poets in Persian history. Their tombs are not quiet monuments. They're gathering places where Iranians still come on weekends to recite verses, leave handwritten poems among the flowers, and sit in silence. That's a country where people visit a poet's tomb the way others visit a beach. The Nasir al-Mulk Mosque, often called the Pink Mosque, is one of the most photographed buildings in Iran. Every morning, sunlight pours through stained glass windows and lights the prayer hall in waves of color. Purple, gold, green, blue. It looks like a scene from a fairy tale. It's absolutely real. Nearby, the Shah Cherokh Shrine glows from the inside. Its walls and ceilings are covered in tiny mirror tiles, Ainakari, designed to reflect light like a living chandelier. No photograph does it justice. You have to stand inside it. And outside the religious sites, there are the gardens. roses, cypress trees, fountains. Echoes of ancient Persian garden design that later influenced the Mughal Empire in India, and through them, formal gardens across the world. But to understand why Shiraz once ruled empires, you need to leave the city and walk among the ruins of a civilization that shook the ancient world. This wasn't just a palace, it was a statement. Persepolis was the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire, built over 2,500 years ago by Darius the Great, and designed to do one thing: make every king, every ambassador, every visitor feel small. It worked. It still does. The entrance is still guarded by the Gate of All Nations, flanked by giant stone bulls with human faces, the same creatures that have stood here since 486 BCE. A staircase leads up to vast column halls once lined with gold, silver, and cedar wood from Lebanon. Today, the wood is gone, the gold is gone, but the stone remains. One of the most breathtaking features is the carved processions. Dozens of delegations from across the empire, Ethiopians, Babylonians, Indians, Greeks, Lydians, are shown bringing tribute to the Persian king. Their faces are detailed. Their gifts are specific. Their clothes, their hairstyles, their animals, all different, all carved with stunning precision. It is the most detailed visual record of the ancient world's diversity that has ever been found. And it all came crashing down in 330 BCE, when Alexander the Great burned the complex during his conquest. Some say it was deliberate revenge for the Persian burning of Athens. Others say it was an accident, fueled by wine and celebration. Either way, what's left today is astonishing. A 2,500-year-old ruin that still makes you feel like you're standing inside history. And just 7 miles, 12 kilometers, away from Persepolis, there is something even more ancient and far more mysterious. Imagine looking up at a cliff face and seeing 4 kings staring back at you. Naksh-e Rustam is a UNESCO-listed necropolis cut directly into a vertical rock face northwest of Persepolis. 4 enormous cross-shaped tombs are carved into the cliff at a height of around 50 feet, 15 meters. The burial chambers of Darius the Great, Xerxes, Artaxerxes I, and Darius II. They've been there for 2,500 years. Below the tombs, carved in astonishing relief, are battle scenes and royal proclamations from the later Sassanid Empire. Kings on horseback, Roman emperors kneeling in submission, gods descending from the sky to hand over rings of power. One carving shows the Persian king Shapur, who reigned in the 3rd century CE, with the Roman Emperor Valerian kneeling before him. An emperor of Rome, the most powerful nation on earth at the time, captured and humiliated, carved into a cliff. Still there, still unmistakable. Naksh-e Rustam is often visited as a quick stop after Persepolis, but it deserves far more than that. Spend an hour here at dusk, when the light falls sideways across the carvings, and you won't want to leave. From the tombs of ancient kings, we travel back to the living. to a city that mastered survival in the desert so completely, it barely needed the outside world. While most cities in history were built near rivers, Yazd was built in a desert, on purpose, and it's been here continuously inhabited for over 3,000 years. Yazd is the city of wind catchers. These tall, chimney-like structures, called badgers, rise above the rooftops in every direction, channeling the slightest breeze downward into rooms below, creating natural air conditioning without a single kilowatt of electricity. It's one of the oldest passive cooling systems in the world. And in a city where summer temperatures routinely hit 104 degrees Fahrenheit 40 degrees Celsius, it wasn't a luxury. It was survival. Yazd is also one of the last strongholds of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, founded in ancient Persia. Their sacred fire temple houses a flame said to have been burning continuously for over 1,500 years. Not a replica, the same flame. The city itself is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a maze of mud brick alleys, rooftop terraces, and hidden courtyards. From above, it looks like a frozen wave of sand-colored domes stretching to the horizon. And beneath all of it runs one of the greatest engineering marvels in human history: the qanats, ancient tunnels dug by hand, using only simple tools and an understanding of gravity, delivering fresh water from mountain aquifers to desert cities. Some of these tunnels are over 2,500 years old. They still work today. Yazd is not about grand gestures. It's about quiet genius. And just 200 miles, around 320 kilometers to the northwest, lies a city so perfectly designed that 17th century visitors called it half the world. Isfahan doesn't shout, it mesmerizes. At its heart is Naqsh-e Jahan Square, one of the largest public squares on Earth, and one of the most beautiful spaces ever built by human hands. It was designed in the early 1600s and surrounded by mosques, palaces, and bazaars in a perfect proportioned rectangle. The Shah Mosque anchors the southern end, its towering twin minarets and 7-color tilework visible from across the city. Inside, a dome so precisely calculated that a single whisper at its center bounces back to you from every direction at once. Across the square stands the Sheikh Lotfallah Mosque, smaller, but even more refined. Built not for the public but for royalty, its interior changes color as the sun moves. Cream at dawn, gold at noon, pale rose at dusk. The tilework shifts with the light like something alive. But the square isn't the whole story. On the western edge of Naqsh-e Jahan stands Ali Kappa Palace, the imperial gateway through which the Safavid Shahs once watched polo matches played on the square below. 6 stories tall, its top floor is an open music room unlike anything else in Persian architecture. The walls and ceiling are carved with the shapes of vessels and instruments, bottles, vases, lutes, not as decoration, but as acoustic chambers designed to give the room a perfect resonant sound. It was a concert hall built into a palace wall 600 years ago. Walk 10 minutes minutes from the square and you reach something even older. The Jame Mosque of Isfahan is not the most photogenic building in the city, but it may be the most important. Construction began in the 8th century and continued, layer upon layer, for over 1,000 years. Every major dynasty that ruled Iran left something here: a new dome, a new courtyard, a new tilework style. The result is not a building but a living archive, a complete visual history of Islamic architecture compressed into a single structure. UNESCO called it a panoramic view of Iranian architecture. Architects make pilgrimages here from across the world. And then there's something that surprises almost every visitor. Tucked inside Isfahan's Armenian quarter is Vank Cathedral, a 17th century Armenian Christian church built with the blessing of the Safavid Shahs. Step inside and the ceiling is covered in frescoes. Biblical scenes, painted in vivid detail, framed by Persian tilework and Islamic geometric borders. Christian imagery and Islamic craft, sharing the same walls. Built in the same century, in the same city. Isfahan was the capital of the Safavid Empire at its height. The city was designed to reflect the power and sophistication of that empire. Walking through it now, 6 centuries later, it still does. But there's a quieter city just 2 hours north, where elegance takes a more personal, intimate form. Kashan is where wealthy Persian families hid their treasures, behind plain mud brick walls, invisible from the street. Step through the right door, and you're inside one of the most refined interiors in the Islamic world. The historic houses of Kashan, particularly the Tabatabai and Borajerdi houses, are 200-year-old mansions that represent Persian domestic architecture at its absolute peak. Multiple inner courtyards, each designed to manage light, airflow, and privacy. Stained glass windows that project colored light onto white walls at noon. Underground rooms, cool even in summer, connected to the ancient Kanat water system running beneath the city. The Sultan Amir Ahmad bathhouse offers a look at traditional Iranian bathing culture. Domed ceilings perforated with small glass skylights that send shafts of light down through steam. Climb to the rooftop and the view of clay domes stretching across the old city feels like something from a dream. Kashan is also the center of Iran's rosewater industry. Every spring, the nearby village of Kamsar fills with the scent of damask roses, distilled using copper stills by the same method used for centuries, producing rosewater exported across the world. Small, overlooked, and extraordinary. Now we make a dramatic leap, both in geography and in time. We're going southwest, to a place so ancient it predates the Persian Empire by 1,000 years. Most people think of pyramids and think of Egypt, but Iran has one too, and it's 3,200 years old. Chogha Zanbil is a ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid temple, built by the Elamite king Untouched around 1250 BCE in what is now Khuzestan province, in southwestern Iran. At its original height of approximately 174 feet, 53 meters, it towered over the flat plains around it. 3 of its 5 original tiers still survive, rising from the desert in a perfect stepped formation. Each brick, and there are millions of them, was stamped with cuneiform inscriptions before being laid. Here's the detail that most people never mention. Chogha Zanbil was never finished. The king who ordered it died before it was completed. The city around it was never fully populated. And so what you're looking at today is a monument frozen mid-construction, a time capsule abandoned 3,200 years ago, preserved almost exactly as it was when the workers put down their tools. UNESCO designated it Iran's first World Heritage Site in 1979. Yet most of the world has never seen a photograph of it. From this ancient Elamite pyramid, we travel northwest to a dome that changed the history of architecture, and almost nobody knows it exists. You've heard of the Hagia Sophia. You've heard of the Florence Cathedral. You probably haven't heard of Sultaniyeh. But it belongs in the same sentence. Built in the early 14th century by the Mongol ruler Algey II, the Sultania Dome rises to 170 feet or 52 meters, making it the third largest brick dome in the world. And here is where it gets interesting. It was built before the Florence Cathedral. Some architectural historians believe that Italian architects who traveled east along the Silk Road saw this dome and brought the technique back to Europe. The double-shell dome design, where an inner shell and an outer shell work together structurally, appears here at Soltaniyeh first, and then later in Brunelleschi's masterpiece in Florence. The dome's exterior is covered in deep turquoise tiles, though many have crumbled over the centuries. It rises from the flat Zanjan plain in total isolation, surrounded by fields and scattered villages, with no buildings anywhere near its height. The effect is extraordinary, and on most days, there are almost no tourists here. You can walk up to one of the most architecturally significant buildings in human history and have it entirely to yourself. That is the strange privilege of traveling in Iran. From this Mongol dome, we now head east to a city of paradoxes, a place of 13 million people, smog, glass towers, and unexpected depth hiding beneath the noise. Tehran is chaotic, noisy, and vast, and most visitors write it off too quickly. Iran's capital is home to over 13 million people. It has one of the busiest metro systems in the Middle East. It traffic jams at midnight. But beneath the expressways and tower blocks, Tehran holds stories most visitors never hear. Start with the Golstan Palace, a Qajar-era complex of mirrored halls, royal thrones, and mosaic courtyards, sitting quietly in the middle of the downtown bazaar district. Outside, horn-blaring traffic. Inside, the silence of 200-year-old rooms where kings received foreign diplomats. Then there's the National Jewelry Treasury, one of the most astonishing collections of gems and royal objects anywhere in the world. A globe made entirely of emeralds, rubies, and diamonds. Crowns that weigh several kilograms. Swords encrusted with stones. Open only a few days a week and guarded like a bank vault. Tehran is also a city of contradictions you feel in real time. Street food vendors selling saffron rice beside designer coffee shops. A city where ancient Persian poetry is quoted in everyday conversation and the latest global music plays behind closed apartment doors. And looming above the entire city, visible on clear days from almost anywhere in Tehran, the reason we're leaving right now. Because just north of the city, a snow-capped volcano dominates the skyline. The tallest mountain in the Middle East, a place of myth, sulfur, and extreme altitude. It's not just the tallest mountain in Iran. It's the highest volcano in all of Asia. Mount Damavand rises to 18,406 feet, approximately 5,610 meters, dominating the Alborz mountain range and the entire northern horizon of Tehran. On a clear winter morning, you can see it from the city, a perfect snow-capped cone floating above the smog line like a vision from another world. But Damavand isn't just a peak. It's a symbol. In Persian mythology, this is the mountain where the evil tyrant Zahak was chained by the hero Feridun, imprisoned inside the rock for eternity to prevent him from destroying the world. In the Shahnameh, Iran's national epic, written 1,000 years ago, Damavand appears as a sacred living presence that shapes the fate of nations. Today, the mountain draws both climbers and scientists. The summit often steams slightly, a reminder that it's dormant, not dead. Volcanic sulfur vents dot the upper slopes. In summer, the trails bloom with wildflowers growing between ancient lava flows. Climbing Damavand is not easy. Altitude sickness strikes fast above 13,000 feet or 4,000 meters. Sudden weather changes have stranded experienced mountaineers. And the final push to the summit passes through a sulfurous moonscape that feels nothing like the green forests lower down. But those who reach the top stand on the highest point in Iran, in the Middle East, in the Islamic world. And on a clear day, they can see for hundreds of miles in every direction. We descend from the volcano and head northeast. Where the land flattens, the climate shifts, and the remains of one of history's greatest military engineering projects still stretches across the horizon. China has a Great Wall. Most people don't know that Iran does too. The Gorgan Wall, also called the Red Snake, stretches for 121 miles, 195 kilometers, across northeastern Iran, from the Caspian Sea to the foothills of the mountains. Built by the Sassanid Empire in the 5th or 6th century CE, it was designed to hold back nomadic invasions from the Central Asian steppe. But it wasn't just a wall. It was a complete military system. Along its length, archaeologists have found the remains of over 30 fortresses, dozens of military barracks, and the channels of an elaborate canal that supplied fresh water to the garrison troops stationed along its entire length. At its peak, estimates suggest up to 30,000 soldiers may have defended this structure simultaneously. In scale and engineering ambition, it rivals, and in some measure surpasses, sections of the Chinese Great Wall built in the same era. And yet the world barely knows it exists. Most of it still lies buried under farmland. Visible sections rise from fields of wheat and cotton, red-brown earthworks, massive and unmistakable, cutting across the flat landscape like a scar from another age. Only recently have serious archaeological excavations begun. What they keep finding suggests this may be one of the most underestimated historical sites on Earth. Now we leave the flat northeastern steppe and travel west, into the mountains, where the landscape changes so completely, so suddenly. Imagine a village where the roof of one house is the courtyard of the next. That's not a metaphor. That's how Masuleh was built. Nestled in the Alborz Mountains of Jilin province in northern Iran, Masuleh is a terraced village that clings to a steep hillside like a series of steps. Because the terrain is so extreme, the rooftops of lower homes serve as the footpaths and yards of those above. There are no cars here. The streets are simply too narrow and too steep. The result is a village that has to be seen to be believed. Masuleh receives so much rainfall that fog rolls through its streets every morning, and the walls of its yellow ochre buildings are perpetually damp. Everything grows: moss on the stairs, wildflowers in the cracks, ferns along the water channels that run through every lane. The surrounding mountains are blanketed in dense forest, part of the ancient Hyrcanian ecosystem, and the air carries the scent of wet leaves and would smoke year-round. The village has been inhabited for over 1,000 years. Many of its buildings still function as they always have. Family homes, tea houses, craft workshops. Visitors are welcomed, but Masuleh is not a museum. It's a living community, and it's one of the most visually striking villages anywhere in the world. And just a short distance away through the same green mountains, Hidden inside the jungle sits a fortress that once controlled this entire region. You don't see it at first. You hike through trees, climb old stone steps, and then, suddenly, it appears. Rudkhan Castle sits in the Green Mountains of Jilin province at an elevation of around 2,300 feet or around 700 meters above sea level. Built during the Sassanid era and expanded in the 11th century, it was designed to be invisible from a distance and impregnable up close. Its walls stretch for over 4,900 feet or 1,500 meters and connect 42 watchtowers. Walking the full perimeter feels like walking a miniature Great Wall, but one completely covered in moss, draped in forest, and perpetually wrapped in mountain mist. Getting there requires about an hour of uphill hiking from the base, past waterfalls, across stone bridges, and through forests so dense that the light is green by the time you arrive. The castle never fell by force. It was taken once through a siege, and it fell to ruin not through conquest but through centuries of gradual abandonment, slowly being reclaimed by the forest that surrounds it. Today, it's one of the most atmospheric historical sites in Iran. Visit on a weekday in morning fog, and you may have it entirely to yourself. Deeper into these same northern mountains, the forest hides one more secret, something that has nothing to do with history or architecture, and everything to do with raw, untouched nature. Most people don't come to Iran for waterfalls. That's exactly why this one is worth knowing about. Piran Waterfall, also known as Piran Cascade, is hidden in a forested valley in Jilin province, about an hour's drive from Rasht. To reach it, you walk a trail through old-growth forest. Ferns covering the ground, oak and beech trees rising on both sides, the sound of running water building steadily around each corner. The fall itself drops in a long cascade through layered rock, surrounded by vegetation so thick the water seems to emerge from the forest itself. In spring and early summer, the volume is extraordinary, a wall of white water that creates enough mist to soak you from 50 feet, 15 meters, away. But what makes Piran special isn't the waterfall alone. It's the setting. The combination of dense ancient forest, mist, ferns, and the sound of water creates something you simply don't associate with Iran. This is what the north is. A different world. Quiet and green and completely unexpected. We leave the forest behind now. We're heading northwest, to a city that has been the beating heart of Iranian Azerbaijan for centuries. For centuries, Tabriz was the most important city in northwestern Iran. At times, it was the most important city in the entire country. It was the capital of multiple dynasties, a key node on the ancient Silk Road, and a melting pot where Persian, Turkic, Armenian, and Kurdish cultures converged and mixed into something entirely their own. The language of Tabriz is Azerbaijani Turkish, distinct from Persian, and the city's identity is proudly its own. At the city's heart is the Grand Bazaar of Tabriz, one of the largest covered bazaars in the world, and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. With more than 4 miles, 7 kilometers, of interconnected covered corridors, it's not just a market. It's a city inside a city. Brick vaults and arched ceilings filter the light. Caravanserais, ancient merchant inns, still operate inside the complex. The smell of spices, leather, and tea drifts through every passageway. The city also holds the Blue Mosque, once called the Turquoise of Islam. Heavily damaged by earthquake in 1779, its surviving tilework still hints at what must have been one of the most beautiful buildings in the Islamic world. Tabriz is gritty, proud, and largely ignored by international tourism, which means it's still entirely itself. And just outside Tabriz, about an hour's drive into the mountains, there's a village that defies every expectation. A place where people still live the way they have for 700 years, inside volcanic rock. Imagine carving your home directly into a volcanic cone. Not as an experiment, not as a museum exhibit, as a home that your family has lived in for 700 years. That's Kandovan. Located in East Azerbaijan province near Mount Sahand, Kandovan is a village of cone-shaped rock dwellings carved directly into ancient lava formations. When the volcano erupted thousands of years ago, it left behind a field of hardened ash towers, called troglodyte formations, each one hollow enough and hard enough to carve into a home. And that's exactly what people did. Unlike similar cave villages in Turkey's Cappadocia, which have largely become tourist sites, people in Kandovan still live in these formations full-time, passing homes down through generations. Many have been upgraded over the decades. Electricity, running water, even Wi-Fi. All inside 700-year-old volcanic rock. The stone acts as natural insulation. Cool in summer, warm in winter. No heating bills. No air conditioning. The mountain provides. Many homes have multiple floors, carved vertically into the cone, a living room on the ground level, a bedroom cut higher up, a storage chamber at the top. Walking through Kandovan feels like walking through a fantasy film set. Except the people cooking dinner and hanging laundry are very real. There is also a natural spring in the village, believed by locals to have therapeutic properties, particularly for kidney health. Visitors arrive from across Iran to fill bottles and take the water home. And just a short drive from Kandovan, something waits that tells a very different kind of story. Not about what Iran has created, but about what it is now losing. It was once the largest saltwater lake in the Middle East. Now it's a warning. Lake Urmia sits between the cities of Tabriz and Urmia in northwestern Iran. At its peak, it covered more than 2,000 square miles, 5,200 square kilometers. An inland sea in the middle of a mountainous landscape, famous for its deep blue water, its flamingo colonies, and its extraordinary mineral content. But over the last 4 decades, the lake has shrunk by more than 80%. The causes are well documented. Upstream dams blocking the rivers that fed it, intensive agricultural irrigation pulling water from the watershed, and the accelerating effects of climate change. What was once a great body of water is now mostly white salt flats, cracked earth, and the rusting hulks of old piers standing in the middle of nothing. What water remains has become so saline that it turns blood red, caused by salt-loving algae and bacteria that thrive in extreme concentrations. It looks like the end of something. In many ways, it is. And yet, in recent years, recovery efforts have begun. Redirected river flows, reduced irrigation quotas, and international conservation partnerships have started to show small results. In wet years, the lake grows slightly. Flamingos return to the shallow edges. Whether it will ever recover fully, nobody knows. But Lake Urmia stands now as Iran's most visible reminder that ancient places can be lost, and that the decisions made today will determine what is left for the people who come after. And with that, our journey through Iran comes to an end. We've crossed from blood-red beaches to the hottest desert on Earth. From a pyramid 3,200 years old to a dome that may have inspired the Renaissance. From a city built entirely of wind catchers to a village carved inside volcanic rock. From the tallest volcano in Asia to a lake that is slowly disappearing. But Iran doesn't fit into one story. It never has. It's not just ancient or modern. Not just dry or green. Not just one culture, one language, one landscape, or one religion. It's all of them at once. Layered, complex, often contradictory, and more beautiful than the headlines have ever suggested. You could spend a lifetime here, and still feel like you're only beginning.